plans to build the country's first commercial wind farm. 8 giant wind turbines, each 40 metres high, will be constructed on a sheep station at Crookwell on the New South Wales southern tablelands. According to the locals, the spot's windy enough, and once turning, the turbines will feed power over more than 3,000 homes into the national grid. And already setting the pace in the renewable energy race, the Honda Dream Car has extended its lead in the World Solar Challenge.
Sightseeing and photographic vehicles were getting...
Oh, well, I suppose in Tennant Creek we see most things that go by, so I find it quite interesting anyway.
Averaging better than 95 kilometres an hour, the Honda car is expected to reach Adelaide by Wednesday. To finance, and the share market fell slightly today after gaining ground.
The project will be the first of several wind-swept areas turned over to producing electricity.
For 42 years, Hazel Seaman's family has farmed sheep. Now they're about to harvest the wind.
Sheep don't take much notice in a paddock. Young cattle will probably be very inquisitive for a while and wonder what's going on, but they'll take it in their stride, like the rest of it.
Nestled in the southern highlands near Goulburn, the 600-hectare property will soon produce enough electricity to power 3,500 homes. With average wind speeds of 30 kilometres an hour and strong gusts reaching up to 100 kilometres an hour, Wairakirori here at Crookwell was seen as the perfect property. This computer-generated image shows what the farm will soon look like. 8 turbines pumping power directly into the national grid.
We're determined to reduce greenhouse gases, and obviously we're not going to eradicate them overnight, but if we are serious, we've got to start developing projects like this.
The $10 million project will be built and operated by Pacific Power, one of the state's 3 power generators, and the electricity bought and distributed by Great Southern Energy. It will save 9,000 tonnes of greenhouse gases, equivalent to more than $1 million worth of the non-renewable coal-fired electricity that we use now. But more importantly, it will be a major step forward in the use of sustainable, environmentally friendly alternatives. From July next year, Great Southern Energy will give local businesses the opportunity to purchase some of this green energy. But as it's all connected to a national grid, just how they ensure they get what they pay for is another matter. In effect, those businesses will be subsidising farms like this one.
Some people will value in their businesses being able to say to their clients that in the purchase of their electricity, they're doing it in this way that's environmentally friendly, that's new, and in order to be able to make that claim, they're paying towards the costs of that power. So we're giving the consumers the choice.
Wind is already harvested in Esperance in Western Australia, although not on a nationally commercial basis. And it's proved to be successful overseas, particularly in Europe. Developers here believe Wairakirori will be the first of many wind farms on the Australian landscape.
We are the land, we are the people of the land, and I think it is up to us to create history in that manner.
Only needing final council approval, the wind turbines should be up and running by the end of next year. Melissa Doyle, 11am.
Making money from wind power. Well, the elements were the big winner on day 2 of the World Solar Car Challenge. From Darwin to Adelaide, powerful wind gusts cut down top speeds of many of the competitors. But day 3 of the event, the Honda Dream Team says will be theirs.
Still running on nothing but the sun, the International World Solar Challenge completed day 2 yesterday. But it was the wind that was causing the problems. Gusty conditions and an uphill gradient slowed the 47 competitors down an average of 7 kilometres an hour, preventing the Honda Dream Team leaders from making an 800 kilometres a day record. That's an average of 100 kilometres an hour. But still tailing Honda was Split-Scaller. At second place, they've been narrowing the gap, now just 78 kilometres behind. At number 3, Japan's AEVA. But the biggest surprise of all is the Aussie students. At 4th place, they're shocking everyone, especially Honda. who paid about $1.5 million for their latest unisearch cell. And money can't buy the best accommodation in the desert either, just the best tents. Everyone here sleeps under the stars. But today's a new day. Conditions are perfect, the temperature's high, and Honda predicts it's going to fuel their fastest time yet. By midday, they should peak at 120 kilometres per hour, around the same time they hit the South Australian border and the state's 110 speed limit. The cars are expected to reach Port Augusta tonight, their 3,200 kilometre course from Darwin to Adelaide almost over. Amanda Palmer, 11 a.m.
And after the break on 11 a.m, Sting.
Solar Challenge. Meanwhile, the lead cars in the challenge are already over the territory border and racing through South Australia.
As the Central Australian sun started to heat up this morning, solar field leader Honda Dream set off from Alice Springs at 8 in its race for a record-winning run to Adelaide. An hour and 20 minutes later, the Swiss Beale solar car was also on the road and making its way to the border. Both cars are now well into South Australia and this afternoon pass through the next media stop at Cagney Homestead. The first Australian car to reach the halfway point today was a Queensland University team at 3 this afternoon. They're in a credible 5th place. Once again, conditions have been windy on the road and posing a problem for some of the vehicles. The bulk of the cars are expected into Alice Springs tomorrow. Cars which don't make it by late on Thursday afternoon will be out of the race. 1,500 kilometres further south, the Honda Dream will have most likely crossed the finishing line 24 hours earlier.
Kilometres in a day during today's third leg of the World Solar Challenge from Darwin to Adelaide. And continuing strong winds look like preventing the race leader from crossing the finishing line tomorrow as scheduled.
The World Solar Challenge has turned into something of a tortoise and the hare affair for second-placed Swiss entry Schooler of Biel. Its crew isn't panicking, even though Honda Dream has led throughout the race. The Japanese car is faster, but the Swiss entry trailed by only an hour through the Alice Springs checkpoint this morning.
We're just driving our race. We got a strategy, but we don't intend to attack them. We're driving our race, and we're just looking at us. We don't look behind or the vehicle in front of us.
The Japanese assault has gone exactly to plan, with few hiccups so far, and they're confident of being first into Adelaide. But the Swiss are ready to pounce if anything goes wrong with the leader. Flying the flag for Australia is fourth-placed UniQuest from the University of Queensland. It's putting up a bold showing against the multi-million-dollar leaders, despite a budget of just $120,000.
We've just exceeded all our expectations, and the only team following us, the only other Australian team, is the University of New South Wales, and they're quite a bit far behind us, what we know. So as long as nothing goes wrong, we'll stay there.
The challenge continues to take its toll on the field, with several more cars knocked out today, including American, Mexican and Italian entries.
And now to tell us what sort of weather the drivers can expect to see in South Australia, here's Xavier Minicon.
Good evening, John. Good evening, everyone. Well, they can expect a few showers for the south tonight, mainly along the coasts, but they're not coming that way, of course. The rest of the state, though, looking warmer and drier tomorrow. In Adelaide today, top temperature to 5 o'clock, 19.1 at 21 minutes to 3. The low, 7.8 at 23 minutes to 7 this morning. Our photo tonight from Joan Hutchison of Aldgate in the Adelaide Hills. Here we see the Aldgate Creek at Aldgate. At 7 o'clock, Adelaide's temperature 15.4, the bar rising, the dew point 7.1, relative humidity 57%. State maxima today ranged from 16 at Cape Willoughby up to 32 at Oodnadatta. Turning to the charts now, the satellite photo is first. Frontal band mainly through the south of the state today. Last night, some very light rain and shower activity, mainly through the south. Kaipo Forest and Beachport, which is a lovely part of the world, they picked up 2 millimetres last night. Today, with just an isolated shower or two, only 0.4 of a millimetre, the highest gauging. Having a look at the synoptic chart, the ridge of high pressure moving in across the bight. Southerly airstream with the frontal system, so drier and sunnier inland, but still some shower activity down around the southern coasts, which are likely to continue tonight, and a bit windy too as the airstream turns southeast to easterly. Looking at the prognostic chart with the front moving out to the Tasman and the high moving further down through to the southeast, we see the shower activity clear. It'll be cool to mild. Thursday, a bit warmer. Northerlies on the back of the high. I hope you're going to be sun smart. Friday, hot conditions before another change moves in, and we can expect the high further out. Looking briefly interstate. Brisbane has a storm. Perth and Melbourne and Hobart have showers, and the maximum range from 14 in Hobart up to 38 in Alice Springs. Back in our state. Isolated showers clearing from the southern coasts and ranges, southwest to southeast winds and seas at 2 metres. Around the country centres. Maxima tomorrow range from 15 in Mount Gambier up to 30 at Coobapedy. Broken Hill is fine with 23 degrees. On local waters, winds will tend southwest at 10 to 15 knots, turning southeast early tomorrow at 7 to 12 knots, but seas around 1.5 metres. And for Adelaide and the metropolitan area, we can expect a shower tonight, still fairly cool with around 9 degrees, so the little touch of winter still with us. Cool tomorrow, though, with around 19 degrees after the shower activity clears out. The next few days, it might be a shower for the pageant, but at this stage it looks okay with around 26 degrees. Friday, hot, though, with 30 degrees before that change comes through, if it does indeed come through. Please be sun smart if you're outdoors, because, as I always say, even if you're as dark as me, you can still suffer in the sunlight. Back to John.
Thank you, Xavier. And now another look at tonight's main stories. Singapore's High Commissioner has warned that if the immigration...
It's great. They're here, they're happy, they're exhausted, and as you say, they're soaked in champagne. They're probably more where that comes from tonight.
And what was the record?
It was, they come down in 33 hours, which chops 2 hours off the previous record, which was also set by Honda in the last race, and so they're very happy.
Now, they crept over the line just after the deadline. What have they been penalised?
I think they've been penalised about 26 minutes is my understanding, which they elected to do. They decided to come on in. It was too hard to stop out on the highway. There was thousands of cars out there. You wouldn't believe the traffic had to plough through in the last few minutes. They said, we're not going to stop, we'll keep coming, we'll take the penalty, and we won't worry about it.
Now, I heard they had a few navigation problems at Port Augusta this morning. What was that?
Took a small turn down the wrong way, and they were guided back on quickly enough and got back into the checkpoint in time, but it only cost them a few seconds.
OK, well, it sounds like a dream run from the dream team. Congratulations again. And, John, there'll be more celebrations over the next few days when the rest of the cars come over the finishing line.
Many thanks, Kelly.
Solar Cycles, the world's first solar cycle challenge, is racing from Darwin to Adelaide and making history by becoming the first solar cycle race in Australia and the first open cycle road race in the world.
Only 2 days after the lead solar car sailed into Alice Springs on Monday, the first of the solar cycles crossed the halfway mark today. Zero to Darwin holds a healthy 1 hour lead over a field of 7 other cycles. It sped into Alice at an exhilarating 80 kilometres an hour at 2:30 this afternoon. The unusual looking bikes use a combination of 1/3 pedal power and 2/3 solar produced electrical input.
Very hard work. Yesterday they were riding into around about 15 knot headwinds. Of course the heat is upwards of 35 degrees. The aerodynamic vehicles are coping with 45 degree temperatures inside the cabin.
The leading cycle is averaging a speedy 57 kilometres an hour, faster than many of the solar cars. And if competing with them, Zero to Darwin would now be in 8th place.
It is really a test of human endurance as well as the technology itself. So it's really a significant accomplishment for anyone who does reach the finish every day.
Already, 60 teams from around the world have expressed interest in competing next time the cycle race is staged.
Meanwhile, in the Solar Challenge, the Honda entry reached Adelaide this afternoon. It made it in moments to spare and broke the record it set 3 years ago. Almost 4 days after leaving Darwin, it was still touch and go late this afternoon as the car approached Adelaide's outskirts. The one thing that could have robbed the team of the record was the city's peak hour traffic. It's been called Rev Head Heaven. And
hot and sunny conditions mean you must be sun smart in Adelaide today. Top temperature to 5 o'clock, 20.3. The low, 11.9 at 6 o'clock this morning. Our photo tonight from Ev Griffiths of Port Lincoln. Here we see the bunker range in the Flinders Ranges. At 7 o'clock, Adelaide's temperature 17.4. The barometric pressure steady. The dew point 4.5, relative humidity 43%. Temperatures across the state today ranged from 15 at several centres up to 31 degrees at Moomba. Let's have a look at the charts now. The satellite photo was first. We've got around the south some very low-level cloud, and from that we've had some last night light shower activity, 2 millimetres at Blackwood. The Haast gauging out to the west, all they've had is 0.4 of a millimetre at Port Lincoln. We see this activity out here, however. If it develops in the west, it will move into the state for Saturday, bringing an odd shower or two with it. On the synoptic chart, high moving down to the southeast, the low pressure moving into the west, and from that we've had very cool to mild conditions, but because of the light winds tonight turning north to northeast, we are expecting some frosty conditions. Looking at the prognostic chart, the high moving into the Tasman, the low moving into the west. Between the two, the airstream turning northeasterly and freshening. In the far west, we will see some, or perhaps see some shower activity developing out there. For the rest of the state on Friday, it should be warm and fine, but that shower activity may begin its movement in, so that by Saturday, it will be cooler. If there is an odd shower or two about, it will be fairly early, clearing later. Now, briefly interstate. Darwin has a storm, Brisbane has a shower, and the maximum range from 15 in Hobart up to 36 in Alice Springs. Back in our state. Isolated thundery showers developing in the far west late tomorrow. Cold tonight in the southeast with local frost. Warm tomorrow with southeast to east winds, shifting northeast and freshening, seas at 1.5 metres. Out around the country centres, dropping to 3 degrees for Mount Gambier and Naracoorte tonight. Maxima tomorrow range from 20 in Mount Gambier up to 34 at Kyan Cutter and Coobapedy. Broken Hill, you're fine with 28 degrees. There is some frost about tonight. It's a slight frost risk. It exists for Murray Bridge and the Barossa. On local waters, winds will tend southeast at 15 knots, then shifting northeasterly tonight to 12 knots, 7 to 12 knots with seas below 1 metre. And for Adelaide and the metropolitan area, cool tonight with 10 degrees, warmer tomorrow though with 26 degrees. Let's have a look at the next few days. Be sun smart, even though it looks like a mild weekend coming up with around 26 degrees on Saturday, Sunday around 22 degrees. Please, if you're going outdoors, cover up. Cheers, John.
Thanks, Eve.
And in Adelaide in a time of 33 hours and 32 minutes, averaging over 89 kilometres per hour. That's the latest news. Good night.
Also tonight, a water contamination scare near Mount Gambier and a bomb on a Qantas flight. Good evening, John Lombard. To snatch away future World Solar Challenges from Darwin to Adelaide. The $300,000 deal was announced as the major place getters crossed the line this afternoon at Technology Park.
Honda's record-breaking solar project cost some $30 million, or $10,000 for every kilometre between Darwin and Adelaide. No wonder the team was delighted, if not relieved, to arrive well ahead of the rest.
3 cheers for the Honda Dream Team. Have it! Hooray!
It's also the first two-seater to tackle the event and the first to finish in 4 days.
They come down in 33 hours, which chops 2 hours off the previous record, which was also set by Honda in the last race, and so they're very happy.
Well, they were until this morning when they discovered thieves had broken into their support van, seen here during the race, and stolen $50,000 worth of computer equipment and mobile phones. It had been parked overnight behind the team's city motel, so they'll be doubling the guard on the Dream machine itself, which today was joined by this second-hand Swiss solar car, which surprisingly swept past the other big-budget teams to grab second. Though for a while it seemed the school kids may have pulled up a little short of the mark. The fellow with the flag and race officials obviously thought so.
Tell them to come. I just did. I've told them 3 times. Tell them I said.
Eventually, they persuaded the driver to climb back in and give the assembled international press the photo they've been waiting for.
The first thing we wanted to have is fun and not to work hard. There are so many automotive companies and we were the only high school up there. I mean, this is strange, and they observed us and they took us serious.
Third place went to another Japanese team whose backers include the Toyota Car Company. The best-placed Australian entry, Queensland University's Sunshark, is running 5th and should finish tomorrow. There have been fears that the end of this 4th event would also mark the end of the World Solar Challenge itself. The South Australian Government's Major Events Corporation has come to the rescue and will run the event every 2 years.
I'd really like to thank South Australia for being a futurist state, not only saving the event, but now showing a way to the future.
The Premier says at $300,000, South Australia's got a bargain. Technology Park, a much-needed solar-powered shot in the arm.
Now to some more.
John, every now and then you need a straight man to get you the laughs, and sometimes it's what you don't say that can make people smile. Speaking of smiling, let's have a look at the weather. Looks like some hot weather coming our way, ahead of a change that may bring in a shower for Saturday. Meanwhile, Adelaide today. Top temperature to 5 o'clock, 28.8 at 23 past 4 the low, 10.5 at 4:45 this morning. Our photo tonight from Bob Potts of Athelston. Here we see Wiggly's Reach on the River Murray. At 7 o'clock, Adelaide's temperature, 24.7 degrees, the bar steady, the dew point 2, relative humidity 21%. Temperatures across the state today ranged from 16 degrees at Cape Northumberland up to 35 at Cook. Let's have a look at the charts now. The satellite photo is first. Middle level cloud associated with the trough out to the west, a lot of moisture in that, and from that tomorrow we'll see it drifting into the state, and it may provide a shower or two for Saturday. Looking at the synoptic chart, northeasterlies coming through, warm to hot conditions, so I hope you're sun smart while you're out there. That trough moving out of the west into the east, and we've also got some isolated shower activity developing in the west at the moment. On the prognostic chart, northeasterlies to northerlies coming through, very, very hot tomorrow. In fact, ahead of the change, the trough moving from the west into the east, the high out in the Tasman, thundery shower activity moving further into the state, so that by Saturday we see a change come through. It'll be cloudy, but mainly fine, although there is the risk of a shower or two coming down in the morning, and then by Saturday, I should say Sunday, southwesterlies coming through, it will still be mild. Now, what's happening in the other states? Darwin, Cairns and Brisbane with a shower, the maximum range from 19 in Hobart up to 39 in Alice Springs. Back in our state, hot at first with a northeast to north wind, southerly change developing in the west with isolated thundery showers, seas at 2 metres. Around the country centres, Mount Gambier dropping to 7 degrees tonight, maxima tomorrow range from 25 at Kingscote up to 37 at several centres, including Kyan Cutter. Broken Hill is fine with 32 degrees. On local waters, winds will tend northeast to northerly, freshening at 15 to 20 knots overnight, turning northwest at 10 to 15 knots by tomorrow, with seas around 1 metre. And for Adelaide and the metropolitan area, dropping down to 15 degrees tonight, so it's fairly warm, but hot tomorrow with 30 degrees. I do hope you're going to be sun smart. Let's have a look at the next few days. Saturday is mainly fine, but please be sun smart if you're going outdoors, especially if you go down to the Fringe for the Festival of the Sun, or if you're coming to town for the pageant, please wear something warm, something that's going to keep you dry, and something on your head to be sun smart. Because, as I always say, even if you're as dark as I am, you can still get some damage if you're out in the sun unprotected. John.
Thanks, Xavier. Very good advice. We've just heard a 28-year-old hawker woman has been airlifted to Adelaide after being seriously injured by a falling tree branch. The woman and her parents were sitting under a tree in Wilpena Pound when the 2 to 3 tonne bough broke. The woman's parents escaped serious injury, but she sustained a broken collarbone and chest injuries. And that's the news to this moment, but we'll leave you with some scenes from Fire on the Snow, the new production based on Scott's ill-fated expedition to the Antarctic. The play opens on Saturday night. I'll be back later with news, but for the moment, good night.
Look how different we are from normal. It's really begun to permeate our body.
You mean to say we're bound?
It's a pleasing experience. Say, it's a pleasing speculation.
This tiny sample of a Martian meteorite may prove that there was and possibly is life on Mars. Here at the Open University, scientists have found a type of carbon in the Martian rock that has the telltale chemical signature, suggesting that it came from some form of primitive life.
What we've looked at is individual grains extracted from the meteorite, and we've analysed the carbon. And what we found in one particular grain is a concentration of carbonaceous materials that has a characteristic which can only have been produced by microbial activity.
In August, American scientists produced these pictures and made the sensational claim that they'd found fossils of microorganisms in a different Martian meteorite over 3 billion years old. The claim was not totally convincing, but samples of the Martian meteorite became star exhibits in museums worldwide, and scientists scrambled to confirm or refute the discovery. Finding evidence of life in 2 Martian rocks, one old and the other relatively young, adds considerable weight to the suggestion that life once existed and may still exist on Mars. And another key part of the puzzle of how life began has just been uncovered on Earth, a rock found in a remote island off the coast of Greenland. This is one of the oldest rocks on Earth, and it contains evidence of the oldest known life ever discovered.
I think this rock then is important on the basis that we've been able to establish that within it there is evidence that we have life on Earth at 3,870 million years ago.
Inside the rock are molecules of carbon, just like those found from Mars, that can only have come from life. This rock is telling us something remarkable about the origin of life on Earth. It was formed when the Earth was just a few 100 million years old and a very different place from what it is today. But it's showing us that even at those earliest times, life had already begun. Two rocks, one from Earth and one from Mars, that both show evidence of life, may help answer the question of when and where life began.
21.3 at 20 past 11 last night. Our photo tonight is from Trevor Davidson of Elizabeth Downs, and here we see the hills near Inaminka. At 7 o'clock, Adelaide's temperature was 25.9, the bar was rising, the dew point was 5.1, and we had a relative humidity of 27%. Temperatures across the state were above average and ranged from 23 at Edithburgh, Kingscote and Robe to 37 at Oodnadatta and Marla. The satellite photo shows a band of middle-level clouds stretching into South Australia, associated with a low-pressure trough. On the synoptic chart, a northerly airstream produced warm to hot conditions ahead of the low centred over the Bight. A low-pressure trough caused cooler temperatures to the far west coast. The prognostic chart shows a low-pressure trough over the Bight, which will extend eastwards, bringing a cooler southerly change with some showers and isolated thunderstorms to most districts by tomorrow night. In the other states, showers for Cairns and Brisbane, with maxima ranging from 21 in Sydney and Canberra to 39 in Alice Springs. Back in our state, cloudy with a few showers and isolated thunderstorms in the west, contracting eastwards. Warm to hot with moderate to fresh northerly winds ahead of a cooler southerly change. Seas up to 1 to 2 metres. Around the country centres, temperatures will range from 23 in Kingscote and Port Lincoln to 34 in Coober Pedy. And Broken Hill can expect a shower or two with a maximum of 34. Now to the warnings, and there is a thunder squall warning for the west coast this evening. On local waters, northeast to north winds freshening 15 to 20 knots overnight, shifting to the south 10 to 15 knots during tomorrow before strengthening. Seas rising to 1.5 metres. And for Adelaide and the metropolitan area, it looks like wet weather gear for the pageant tomorrow with showers and a possible thunderstorm. The next few days, it should be showers clearing. And at that the Gawler Craton.
This barren remote country in the far north has defeated many mining ventures in the past. But with the help of technology, the Gawler Craton's isolation has now worked in its favour. It's now hot property for mining companies.
There is far more widespread gold mineralisation on the Gawler Craton than ever we perceived before.
The Craton is considered the last great frontier for mineral exploration in Australia. Prospecting results so far are enough to have drawn 170 stockbrokers and mining analysts from all over Australia to Adelaide today to discuss the region. Situated between Western Mining's huge Olympic Dam operation and the lucrative West Australian goldfields, geologists are confident the 16-million-year-old rock seams that crisscross beneath may carry similar riches.
Primarily, it's a vast province of prospective rocks around the order of half the size of New South Wales, which is very, very poorly explored.
In 1988, just $8 million was spent on mineral exploration in SA. This year, $30 million. At today's conference, two future difficulties were identified: water and native title.
Well, the large dollars are already being spent. We've seen the presentations here today. So I don't think it's an impediment at all, but I think people have a genuine concern about what the future holds. But I think those concerns are shared by the Aboriginal people too.
Premier Dean Brown will address the conference tonight. In his speech, he makes a plea for mining exploration to be allowed to go ahead in Yumbra Conservation Park, which borders the Gawler Craton.
Which finished in Adelaide today. Unlike the cars, though, the cycles are allowed to supplement the solar cells with some good old-fashioned pedal power.
Through the heat haze, the slickest of the solar cycles looked like it was sheltering from the strong winds that had slowed it on the final leg from Port Pirie. After 9 days on the road, relief was in sight for the team, though they very nearly blew it soon after the start.
We blew a rear tyre just inside Darwin at about 65 kilometres an hour and decided to try and slide it on its roof, so yeah, it wasn't much fun.
You'd have to wonder who in their right minds would set out not once but twice in the same year to tackle the Stewart Highway in one of these. Apart from the reconnaissance ride, the Japanese also enlisted some local knowledge in the form of 2 Adelaide cyclists. One of them, Damon Cramps, was given the honour of steering the solar trike through traffic and across the finish line.
Can you believe your eyes?
The winning time was just a tick over 55 hours at an average speed of 55 kilometres an hour, faster than many of the solar cars. US entry AEVA was second, Canberra's Sunstrike third. And this, believe it or not, is a Ferrari. Well, at least a solar trike built by budding Ferrari engineers, who showed their mettle by fashioning it out of scrap balsa wood in just 3 days, when their original fiberglass entry got squashed on the trip from Italy.
Numero uno.
Either something got lost in the translation or he's sunstruck. They really finished 4th.
Now for all the best information on tomorrow's Melbourne Cup, Leon Big.
5 o'clock, 17.3 at 27 past 3. The low, 11.6 at 21 past 6 this morning. Our photo tonight from Kathy Manson of Modbury North. Here we see the South Para Reservoir. At 7 o'clock, Adelaide's temperature, 13.7, the barometric pressure steady, the dew point, 2.3, relative humidity, 46%. State maxima today ranged from 15 degrees at Robe up to 27 at Oodnadatta. Turning to our charts now, the satellite photo is first. Most of the cloud, mainly low cloud and along the coasts, and we're seeing that formed by a southerly airstream. Fairly dry today, no gaugings to report, but there are some shower activities, showers for the south tomorrow. Looking at the synoptic chart, the high moving into the western bight, moving slowly to the east, southerlies from that, keeping us cool to mild. But on the prognostic chart, the high moves slowly to the east. We have a southerly airstream, cool in the south, mild inland, but the southerlies likely to produce the showers, fairly light and isolated around the southern coasts, and some of that activity may be moving into Melbourne. But by Wednesday, with the high moving further in, we see the airstream turning more easterly and conditions begin to clear up then. Now, briefly interstate. Darwin has a storm, Brisbane has rain, so does Sydney. Cairns, Perth and Canberra have showers, and the maximum range from 15 in Canberra up to 33 in Darwin. Back in our state. Isolated light showers about the southern coast, south to southeast winds and a fresh sea breeze, seas at 2.5 metres. Around the country centres, maxima tomorrow range from 16 at a few places, including Victor Harbour, up to 25 at Cooperative. Broken Hill is fine with 20 degrees. On local waters, winds will tend south to southeast at 12 to 17 knots, reaching 17 to 22 knots by the afternoon, so they're increasing with the southerlies coming through, and the sea's around 1.5 metres. And for Adelaide and the metropolitan area, down to 10 degrees tonight, cloudy but cool tomorrow with 18 degrees, the chance of a shower maybe. Let's have a look at the next few days. Well, warmer by the end of the week with around 26 degrees, slowly heating up, 23 on Thursday. I hope you have a good week coming up, and the weekend probably looks good. My tip for the Cup tomorrow, well, I'll go with one of the horses that are racing. Can't remember them. Back to John.
Thanks, Xavier. Just remember Oscar Schindler. Now, another look at tonight's main story. John Howard has rebuked Independent MP Pauline Hanson after she accused drunken Aborigines of attacking Singaporean troops training in
future. The power of the sun was at work today in Rundle Street as Adelaideans welcomed the 7 entries in the World Solar Cycle Challenge. First across the line was Zero to Darwin, a Japanese entry with 2 Adelaide team members. The weird-looking cycle completed the 3,000-kilometre journey in 55 hours, 1 minute at an average speed of 60 k's. Second was Aero Environment from the USA, and completing the trifecta was Sunstrike from the ACT. For these entrants, the Melbourne Cup isn't the big one. This is.
If they keep doing this race, we'll have a pretty good future for it for research and development. So yeah, as long as it keeps going.
The event is an extension of the World Solar Car Challenge and part of the Festival of the Sun currently being held around Adelaide.
It's about high technology, science and ecology, and what is more perfect than solar energy?
A big street party follows the arrival of these bikes tonight here at the East End, and then for all the solar cycle entrants, a decent rest is high on their agenda. Paul Macon, 10 News.
Turning to finance news now, and the Australian stock market closed higher on expectations the Reserve Bank will tomorrow decide to cut interest rates. The All Ordinaries finished up more than 18 points.
The EOS team might have been several days behind the winner, but the girls recorded an achievement they'll remember for a lifetime.
When EOS crossed the finish line at Technology Park just after 3 o'clock, the cheer squad went wild. The driver of the final leg, Natalie Kemp, was overwhelmed. Earlier in the day, the team battled the prospect of not having enough sun to power their vehicle. Always on edge, they might not finish the race.
Well, that's always in the back of your head, particularly with the cloud cover this morning. We got some good charge early this morning, and that just lasted us to here.
There was hardly a dry eye as excited parents and schoolmates congratulated team members. The girls extremely proud they mixed it with the best international competitors.
I think, it's just amazing that a school like Annesley College can compete with, Honda and the Swiss team. It's just, you feel so proud to be among those people. It's just amazing.
After 10 days on the road, the EOS team plans a big party tonight to celebrate their own personal victory.
Definitely, yes. We're going to have a big party with all the teams, so it's going to be really good.
Phil Luke, 7 Nightly News.
Well done indeed. Overseas, Pakistan's Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto has been sacked and her...
With a faltering power supply threatening to scuttle its race, it finished in 31st place.
The young Annesley crew averaged almost 36 kilometres an hour between Darwin and Adelaide, and they put some of their better bankrolled opponents to shame, despite having their share of problems.
Everything's happened in this. We've been struck by lightning, we've had all sorts of things. The great teams pulled together under huge adversity.
Today's final run into Adelaide was hampered by low cloud and strong winds, but the EOS received a hero's welcome from more than 50 primary school children as it passed 2 wells. It finally crossed the line shortly after 3 o'clock in a time of 83 hours, 51 minutes, grabbing 31st position.
Are you relieved it's all over?
Very relieved.
Do you think you'll be doing it again?
Yes, we're all hoping to come back for the next one.
Renewable energy for the future. And that includes one idea that's out of this world.
Imagine being able to light up a city with solar power 24 hours a day. It may seem like science fiction, but in fact it's already on the drawing boards. A leading US researcher says an orbiting satellite some 10 kilometres square covered in solar cells could be placed above the Earth in such a way that it's always facing the sun.
That energy would then be beamed to the Earth with radio frequency beam, where it'd come to a receiver station on the ground, converted back to electricity, and go right into our distribution grid.
He says the technology exists now. What's needed is the right mix of economic and political imperatives to make such a massive engineering project worthwhile.
And it has the potential of providing abundant, low-cost, environmentally clean energy.
Nearly all the other bright ideas being canvassed at a 2-day solar symposium in Adelaide are a little more down to earth, but no less remarkable.
We can now see super batteries which may become practical batteries for electric vehicles and give us the range that we want from electric vehicles.
Honda put together the most efficient solar system money could buy. They relied on the solar cells developed by Martin Green's team at the University of New South Wales. They're now close to achieving the same energy efficiencies around the house.
We believe by about 2001 the cells will be cheap enough to be used on the roof of homes and generate electricity at prices roughly competitive with grid electricity.
Beyond that, as far as solar power is concerned, the sky's the limit.
Clock 17.4 at 27 past 4 the low, 9 degrees at 3 minutes past 5 this morning. Southeast and the far northwest. Show you that on the charts though. First in Adelaide today, top temperature to 5 o'clock. 20.5 at 19 past 2. The low was 11.1 degrees, and that was at 45 minutes past midnight. Our photo tonight is from Tom Bennett of Goodwood. Here we see the Pitchy Ritchie Railway, just near Woolshed Flat. At 7 o'clock, Adelaide's temperature 16.4 degrees. The barometric pressure is rising, the dew point 7.7, and the relative humidity 56%. State maxima today ranged from 16 degrees at Robe up to 28 degrees at Marie and several other northern centres. Turning to our charts now, the satellite photo is first. Low cloud mainly through the south and down through the southeast coasts. A lot of that moving through to Victoria. The rest of the state, though, fairly clear. I do hope you've been sun smart if you've been out in the sun today. Last night, some light shower activity. Saw 3 millimetres at Clapham, and the highest it got out to the west was 0.4 of a millimetre at Kimber today. Fairly dry, no gaugings to talk about. Looking at the synoptic chart, the high still dominant, still moving fairly slowly, and that's likely to be with us for the day tomorrow. The southeast airstream coming through, cool to mild conditions and a cool night ahead of us. Looking at the prognostic chart, warmer across the state tomorrow as the high drifts out to the east, the northwesterlies coming through, the northerlies coming through out to the northwest, some moisture feeding in from Western Australia, so we see some shower activity out there. Southerlies likely to produce some light shower activity in the lower southeast. Both of those activities likely to clear during the day. The rest of the state fine and cool to mild. The trough coming in on Friday, moving towards us, weakening as it moves, and that change to follow it will bring in some cloud and a southerly airstream behind it, so we see the risk of a shower coming through, and it will be cool for the weekend. Now briefly interstate. Darwin has a storm. Perth and Sydney have showers in the maximum range from 17 in Canberra up to 33 in Darwin. Back in our state. Isolated showers in the lower southeast and far northwest. Northwest, seas at 1.5 metres. Out around the country centres, dropping to 7 degrees at Keith and Mount Gambier. Maxima tomorrow range from 12 at Victor Harbour up to 30 at Coopapedy. Broken Hill, fine with 24 degrees. On local waters, winds will tend southeast at 7 to 12 knots. Southwest sea breeze by the afternoon at 15 to 20 knots. Good for the boating with seas at 1.5 metres. And for Adelaide and the metropolitan area. Cool tonight, dropping down to 10 degrees. Sunny tomorrow, though, so please be sun smart with 23 degrees. The next few days, the weekend looks cool, but it should be mainly fine, 19 degrees at the top. Please be sun smart. John?
Many thanks, Xavier. Now, another look.
Now, the Borbidge government in Queensland is proposing to extend power into that subdivision, a decision described as catastrophic by conservationists. Here's Chris Allen.
Ian, the midday news will be on in a minute. Can you turn the generator on, please?
For Kathy and Ian Rafferty, just watching TV is a luxury. Every time they switch on an appliance, Ian has to start a generator. It's something the Raffertys have been forced to live with for 9 years.
Well, we settled here with an expectation that we would have a normal quality of life, as did the majority of the people that have settled here. I don't think the majority of Australian people would deny us an essential service, something they take for granted.
When the Raffertys built here in 1987, the local electricity authority told them power would be running to their door within a year. But then the neighbouring rainforest was World Heritage listed, and a Labor government took control of Queensland, declaring the Daintree River would be an environmental border beyond which power would never be extended. The Raffertys and many of their neighbours have been fighting for it ever since.
Given that we all bought our properties, or most of us, I should say, bought our properties before World Heritage listing, and World Heritage listing wasn't going to interfere, we don't understand why it's taken 8 years further down the track to get this far.
Go and live in a remote place because of its beauty and its lifestyle attractions, and then to turn around and want all the comforts of urban living doesn't stack up.
Mike Berwick is the local mayor. He fears extending power will lead to increased development north of the Daintree River. Like those campaigning for electricity, Mike Berwick lives north of the crocodile-infested Daintree, but unlike most of the northern residents, he has an advantage. Well, Mike, some of your constituents would say that it's all right for the mayor, he lives on the north side of the river and he has power. Are you being hypocritical in this?
Well, power's been to this area for 20 or 30 years. All my neighbours have got it. It's cleared farming land up this part of the world. I don't think it's any different than you having power. And when we bought this block of land, it had power on it, and we would have paid $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 extra for the block of land because it had power.
There are 1,200 privately owned blocks of land north of the Daintree River. About 400 have been settled, and while they're outside the World Heritage Area, they're still claimed to be environmentally sensitive.
It's full of rare and threatened species. Our vegetation audit that the council did showed, I think, 140 rare and threatened species of vegetation, let alone the animals. It discovered 4 new species of plant during the course of the vegetation audit. Some of those species are restricted entirely to freehold land, which at the moment could be cleared without any recourse to anybody. So you're talking about on the freehold land has very high biological values.
If you have power without any controls, then basically this area is going to become a big, leafy green suburb, and its whole economic base of existence is going to collapse.
Dr. Hugh Spencer is director of the Cape Tribulation Research Station, which operates on power generated by this solar pyramid. He says people who live here have to expect to rough it.
People who come here should be people who want to live as close to a union with nature as possible. And they have to be aware also, by coming here, they are also, shall we say, holding in trust the land that they live on for future generations, because this is all we have left, is this little area.
Living in a union with nature is not what Dennis Very had in mind when he applied for and won the tender to build this hotel at Cow Bay in the centre of the Daintree. It costs him $90,000 a year to generate enough power to run his business, and he estimates electricity would cost a third of that.
Oh, I think it's been unfair. We've had public meetings here where, it's just unanimous that the people want the electricity. How it gets here is up to the experts. But the majority of the people do want the electricity, and they're definitely being denied by. I feel it's quite spiteful.
From her front veranda, Kathy Rafferty can see a neighbour's house which has power connected. She's ready to leave what she describes as living in third world conditions, but her husband Ian is determined to fight on.
This country here that we're living on was a totally cleared cow paddock. And when somebody tells me what the World Heritage values are here and can convince me that they're going to be affected by us living here and having mains power to the property, they're going to have to do some damn strong convincing.
At the moment, the only way into the Daintree is via this ferry. Every year it takes 300,000 visitors to what has become a more popular tourist destination than Uluru or Kakadu. Because of its proximity to a World Heritage area, the federal government will have to approve the extension of power here, something that will escalate this issue and ensure it becomes the next major environmental battleground.
Chris Allen from Queensland. In the weeks and days leading up to yesterday's Melbourne Cup, the media was dominant.
Going to the zoo. Meanwhile, in Adelaide today, top temperature to 5 o'clock, 31.